All right, let's go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar brought to you by Codefresh Live. Today, we're presenting Making the Most of Helm 3 with Codefresh. Our presenter is Anna Baker, DevOps Evangelist for Codefresh, and today she'll show you how engineers use Helm 3 to develop software faster. You'll learn how to build Helm pipelines, view Helm releases, monitor Helm environments, and more. But first, a couple housekeeping items from me. We encourage your questions throughout the session. Just please remember to submit them using the Q&A button on your Zoom toolbar rather than the chat so we can keep better track of them. We will type some answers using the Q&A tool and will reserve most for the discussion at the end of the webinar. This session is being recorded and a link to the recording will be sent to you by tomorrow from me, Taryn Jones, so look out for that email. Lastly, please remember to reference codefresh.io/events for upcoming webinars as we have fresh, informative webinars for you several times a month. With that, I will hand it over to Anna to kick off the presentation.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Making the Most of Helm 3 with Codefresh. My name is Anna Baker, and I am a DevOps Evangelist at Codefresh. And also on the call is Kostas Kapolonis. He is another DevOps Evangelist we have here at Codefresh. So today we'll be going over a brief overview of Helm and Codefresh, what's new in Helm 3, native support for Helm within Codefresh, and we'll have some demos. And linked below is the sample application if you'd like to follow along after this and play around with it. The Helm sample app is available within our GitHub repo. So what is Helm? Helm is the only existing package manager for Kubernetes. It's similar to Yum, apt, or Homebrew. It simplifies the process of creating, managing, and deploying applications on Kubernetes by using these things called Helm charts. And you can find the official site and documentation linked below. So what is a Helm chart? A Helm chart is just a collection of manifests that describe a related Kubernetes resource. So you have your chart.yaml file, which is just a basic description of your chart. You have your values.yaml file, which defines the default values of your chart templates. You have your charts directory where your charted dependencies will go, and you have your templates directory where your charted templates will go. And what happens is the templates go through the Helm template rendering engine in conjunction with your values.yaml file, and it renders a manifest that's easy for Kubernetes to understand. Charts can be packaged and published and made available to other users and repositories. A big one is Helm Hub, which is just a collection of dozens of other public repositories you can use. Each time a chart is installed, a new release is created. And a release is just a running instance of a chart on a Kubernetes cluster. So how to use Helm charts? They can be installed by several ways: a chart repository, a local chart archive, an unpacked chart directory, or a full URL. There are some differences between pushing and installing a chart. Pushing a chart will only push the chart to a Helm repository and automatically package it. Installing a chart will create a brand new release from a Helm chart. And like I said, a release is just a running instance of a chart on a cluster. So new in Helm 3, only the Helm binary is necessary now. In Helm 2, we had a thing called Tiller, which was the server-side component of Helm 2. It's since been removed because RBAC was enabled in, well, role-based access control was enabled in Kubernetes 1.6. That kind of made it difficult to manage Tiller, and users would get a broad range of permissions they weren't intended to have. So now with RBAC enabled by default, Helm 3 ended up removing Tiller, and now Helm no longer needs to control who installs what. Security is now on a per user basis and can be configured via the kube config file. Chart installation information is stored in Kubernetes itself instead of tiller. Release names are now scoped to the release namespace instead of the tiller namespace. So previously, if you wanted to have two different namespaces with the same, two different releases with the same name, you couldn't do that because they were scoped to the tiller namespace. Sorry, my clock is going. Now, instead of being scoped to the tiller namespace, releases are scoped to their own namespace. So you can have two different releases with the same name, provided they're in different namespaces. What else? New in Helm 3, we have three-way strategic merge patching. On rollbacks or upgrades in Helm 2, only a two-way merge patch was considered. So the diff was run between an old chart and a new chart. But if you were to edit the live state of the application via kubectl edit or kubectl scale, the charts would be the same. So the changes would not be applied. Now we have three-way strategic merge patching where the old chart, the live state, and the new chart are considered. What else is new in Helm 3? Templates do not use Lua. There was some talk that templating would be using Lua in the future, and I know the groundwork is being built for that. But that's likely not going to be released until future versions, maybe version 4. Secrets as the default storage driver for release information. So previously, release information was stored in config maps, and those were encrypted, which made it difficult to access and apply them. Now release information is stored in secrets, and secrets can be accessed, decrypted, and applied that way. JSON schema chart validation. So if a chart maintainer wants to impose specific chart value types on a chart, they just need to include a JSON schema file. And this validation tool is automatically run on Helm, Lint, Upgrade, or Install. Namespaces are not automatically created for releases anymore. So previously in Helm 2, if you created a release where the namespace didn't exist, it would create it for you. Now Helm 3 follows kubectl convention by throwing an error at you if the namespace doesn't exist. And there are many more changes, but they're linked below. We don't have time to go over all of them today, but you can check them out on their documentation. So why use Helm in the first place? Well, Helm automatically maintains a versioned history of your releases. So if something goes wrong, it's as simple as running Helm rollback. Or similarly, like if you need to upgrade a chart, you could just run Helm upgrade. And if you combine that with CI/CD, you can easily integrate actions into your pipelines. Like before installation begins, maybe you need to run some integration tests, or after an upgrade is finished, maybe you want to send out a notification. And that's where Codefresh comes in. So Codefresh, we are a Docker-based continuous integration, continuous deployment solution. Each build step in the pipeline is built of a Docker image. We have native support for Docker, Helm, and Kubernetes deployments, and we're the only CI/CD platform that offers native Helm support. We include a built-in Helm repository, and we have over 20,000 users. So this is just an overview of the native support we offer for Helm 2 and 3. We have a fully managed hosted Helm repository for Codefresh users, a Helm release dashboard, a Helm and Kubernetes environments dashboard, a Helm promotion dashboard, and if you are already familiar with Helm 2 support in Codefresh, you still have the same capabilities for Helm 3. So this diagram is just to show you how Codefresh handles the CI/CD process for your charts. Obviously, your chart will start off in some kind of version control, Git. Your application gets built into a Docker image and pushed to the Docker registry. You can then install your Helm packages into the cloud. And Codefresh can handle all of this for you. So we knew developers wanted to get started right away, so we've created a default managed Helm repository for every user. It's private by default, but you can set it to public if you want. You can manually install charts from the repository view with the click of a button. And you can also add and use external Helm repositories if you want. So if you have your own private repositories to use, you can do that. So right now I'm going to demo a pipeline that pushes a chart to the internal Codefresh repository. So let's take a look at the repository view first. So here is this CF_Helm_default is the managed repository that's included for every account that I mentioned. We have native support for Kube Hub and Azure as well. Here I've set up my own Google Cloud storage bucket that I'm using as a repository as well. And I did this through adding an external Helm repository. You can do, it's just a one-click thing, and you enter the URL and your authentication variables. And as long as you have the name here, which my name is GS, you can refer to it in your pipeline, and your pipeline will handle the authentication for you. You just do this one time, and that's it, which is great. So in installation, manual installation here, I mentioned before, you can manually install from this view any of these charts. So you just select the version you're interested in, the cluster, and the namespace. You can actually create a namespace from this view as well. Add a new namespace. And the pipeline. So the default pipeline for install is just running behind the scenes, the vanilla Helm install command. But if you want, like I mentioned, you might have some integration tests you need to run beforehand. You can create a pipeline and define it here and run that as a part of your install, which is really cool. So let's look at the pipeline that pushes to the repository. I'm going to go ahead and run it. So while it's running, I'll show you some features here. As it's running, you get a graphical representation of where your pipeline is in the process of running. I mentioned before, each step is a Docker image. So right now it's cloning the main repository. You get a live output of where in the process you are. If you're only interested in, say, one particular step, you can select that step and it'll show you the output for that. Similarly, if you're only interested in one step, you can take a look at the YAML for that step. So for this step, we're using a git clone type step. And this is using, like I said, every step is using an image. Let's see. You can monitor the state. So before and after step execution, you can see the variables that were exported into the Codefresh volume. And the Codefresh volume is just a shared Docker volume. It's shared between all steps of your pipeline. So you can access anything in this volume from all steps, which is a great feature of Codefresh. You can see the metrics here. So your memory usage throughout the pipeline. And another great feature is the inline editor. So if you just want to do a dry run of your pipeline, you can actually edit your YAML inline here directly and run it. You can also select one from version control. So if I want to, I can just select the YAML that exists in version control instead of using the inline editor. But for this demo, I'm going to use that. So it looks like our build finished 2 minutes ago. So if we take a look at the charts view again, we should see our new chart was installed into, or not installed, but deployed to the repo 2 minutes ago. And it shows you the chart versions. So yeah, that's an overview of the chart view. We also have a Helm release dashboard, which is where your charts go after they've been deployed to Kubernetes. You can easily toggle between Helm 2 or Helm 3, view release details and services for a particular release, rollback releases, or define your own pipelines for test rollbacks and deletes. So let's take a look at a pipeline that installs a Helm chart to a Kubernetes cluster. So first, let's take a look at the release dashboard. So here you see I have 2 clusters set up, one where Tiller is installed and the other Tiller is not installed. I'm using that for Helm 3. But if I wanted to toggle between Helm 2 or 3 releases, there's a toggle here. So Helm 2 is looking for the Tiller namespace and Helm 3 is not. Like I mentioned before, we're just using vanilla Helm behind the scenes. So anything you do with Helm, you can do in Codefresh. So this is Helm test by default, Helm rollback by default, Helm delete by default. But if you need to run specific tests as a part of your pipeline or send out a notification, you can create a pipeline here. You can create a pipeline and it'll populate here and you can select that instead of using the vanilla Helm. Let's see, so let's take a look at the pipeline. And I should mention it's best practice to store and deploy the charts. So it's best practice, maybe we'll run this one instead, to store the chart in the repository and then deploy it rather than just deploy it without storing it. So let's run this chart. I'm sorry, pipeline. And let's take a look at what's going on. So I mentioned before, every step is a Docker image. And if you take a look at our step marketplace, you'll find a ton of different plugins available. So for instance, this is the git clone step that we used already to clone the main repository. And it'll tell you the arguments needed, etc. This is just, I'm just showcasing some of the plugins we have. We have a vault step that exports key value pairs from your vault server into the pipeline. But if you actually take a look at the source code, this is just a standard Docker image. So you can create these yourself, and they can be publicly available for everyone in the marketplace, or they can be private and available only to you and your team. So let's take a look at the Helm step. So as a part of this pipeline, we stored the chart in the repository, and we are also installing it. So I mentioned earlier, there's a difference between push and install. And the great thing about this is the only thing you need to do to make this Helm 3 ready is change this Helm version here. If you want to go back to version 2, all you need to do is change the version to whatever version of Helm 2 you're using. Another great thing is the kube context defined here. All you need to do to connect this to your cluster is define the name here. Your pipeline handles the authentication for you because you define this one time as a global configuration, similar to the way you added a Helm repository and authenticated it. You add this one time, and all you need is the name. And the pipeline handles the rest for you, which is great. So it looks like it completed successfully. We have 4 steps: clone, build, store, and deploy. So let's take a look at our release dashboard, and we should see it here, modified 2 minutes ago. It shows you the revision number. If you click on a release, it'll take you to all the services that make up that release. You can access the endpoints. You can see the status. And you can also see a rolling history. So I think in version, in version 12, I changed the version of the chart. And you can see here, it'll show you a diff between the previous version and the version 12 and version 13. If I want to roll back to version 12, I can click rollback. It tells you the current version we're sitting at here. It shows you all of the chart files, the values that were set. So these were the custom values, if you saw, that were a part of that pipeline. And it shows you the final rendered manifest. So let's go back to our slides. So we also offer a Helm environment board. You can track the overview of your cluster status and the builds that affect it for both Kubernetes and Helm environments. So this is great for project leads to come check out the status of their builds. Maybe a developer might want to come see if a pull request was merged and the status of the build afterwards. This is a great way to get like a unified visual representation of that. The Helm promotion board is a way to track applications as they move through your environments and promote them. We'll go into more detail when I show you those screens next. So the Helm environments, oh yeah, this is the right place. The environments dashboard, this is, I have here a Kubernetes environment set up and a Helm environment set up. It tells you whether the environment has been deployed, if it's in progress, its status. It tells you the builds associated with it. So if you click, you can see all of the builds associated, the services, the deployments, and the pods. For the Helm environment, you get a consolidated view of the builds, and similar to the release dashboard, you can see the services, the history, you can roll back from here, the charts, the values, and the manifest. This is our promotion board. So this is just basically a Kanban board where you can track your applications through the life cycle. You can click on this arrow and it will show you the images associated with each application. But let's say that, oh, and it'll show you the chart version and the namespace. Let's say that we're ready to move this Go chart that we created and deployed from staging into production. Well, all you need to do is drag and drop it and select the namespace in the cluster, which it's already set for me, and click promote. And it'll promote it into the next environment. So this is a great way to easily track your applications as they move through the product life cycle. You can also delete applications from this view. And yeah, this is a great tool. So I think, yeah, we have some related resources linked here. The Helm documentation, the Codefresh and Helm documentation, and the Helm sample application we've been playing with. So feel free to play around on your own and create your own pipelines. And if you have any questions, feel free to ping them below in the chat, and be sure to sign up for a free account. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Anna, for your presentation. I see that we do have a few questions in the Q&A section. Just remember to click that Q&A button if you have any questions you would like us to answer. And I also see a couple in the chat that we'll go ahead and address live now. So our first question is, can we use this Helm on Helm 3, I presume, on OpenShift 4.3? Do we know that? Kostas and Anna, I have you both on the line. And they're both our DevOps evangelists. Thank you so much for being here.
Yes, I will answer this. So hello, everybody. I'm Kostis. As Anna said, it's important to understand that everything you see in the UI, it's also happening from the CLI. Behind the scenes, we use the standard Helm APIs, the standard Kubernetes APIs. So there isn't, some kind of magic that happens there. If you have a Kubernetes cluster that is compliant with a standard Kubernetes API, this will work. So assuming that you have an OpenShift cluster, which as far as I know is compliant with the Kubernetes API, everything that you have seen so far will also work with OpenShift clusters. And OpenShift is just an example. The same thing can be said about Rancher clusters, Google clusters, Azure clusters, everything that is following the standard Kubernetes API. So yes is the answer.
Excellent. And next question is, any difference in the changes between using Helm 2 or 3?
Uh, this is a bit generic. So if the question refers to like the changes between vanilla Helm 2 and vanilla Helm 3, we already shared some links in the chat box regarding the main changes from the blog, so you can see them there. In general, the Helm team has said that they will support Helm 2, I think at least for a year. So they have made sure that all the charts, even if they are, let's say, completely unchanged and they still follow the Helm 2 format, they will work also in Helm 3 out of the box. At some point, which I think it's after a year, but maybe with the recent events, they will make it a bit larger. They will start to break compatibility and you will have to make some minor changes in your Helm 3 charts. But for now, you don't need to do anything. Regarding Codefresh, we have tried to make the experience completely the same. So the demo actually was showing this, like the unified way of how you handle both Helm 2 and Helm 3 in Codefresh, and you don't really care about all the minor details. You just go into your pipeline, you change the version, you say, I'm going to use Helm 3, and that's it. I think one of the big advantages regarding the Codefresh side of things is that with Helm 2, you had this idea where you had to match the client version with the server version. So if you, for some reason, you upgraded to a new version of Tiller, and you had, let's say, Tiller 2.9, I don't know, 14, and you switch for 2.9.7, you also had to go to your pipelines and make sure that your client version matches the server version. But since in Helm 3, the server component does not exist anymore, you don't have to update this as often as possible. So you say, I'm going to use Helm 3, it's only a client, and even if Helm 3, creates a new release, you can still use the old version by yourself. So I hope this answers both the plain Helm questions and the Codefresh Helm questions.
Thank you, Kostas. And I want to remind everyone also that all the links that are in this presentation, you'll receive this presentation tomorrow along with the recording. So just look out for that email from me and you'll have all those links. Okay, our next question is, does Codefresh help in automatically handling auto incrementing or build release numbers? Or I'm sorry, auto incrementing build release numbers. I added a word there.
So the pipelines that were shown in the demo were straightforward. We just took the Git tag or Git branch as it was. But this capability also exists with some custom steps. So if you want, we have some customers that have a custom step that they have created on their own, which usually it's specific to programming language. So if you're using, let's say, NPM, you want to change your package file, your package.json file. If you're using Maven, you want to change your POM file. And you can have a pipeline that is changing the version of your application, auto bumping. You can choose maybe if you want to upgrade the minor version or the major version. And then you also commit the final result. Personally, I'm not a big fan of this because the moment you have your pipelines committing by themselves, you might also trigger another pipeline because you have just committed. So it's easy to go on a loop where you trigger a pipeline, it performs a git commit because the version was updated, and then you trigger another pipeline and so on. So it can be done, but you need to be careful on how you approach the triggers there and the auto bumps. And also you need to also to discuss with your team, like, what do you bump? Do you bump the major version, the minor version, the patch version? How do you make this distinction if you follow semantic version?
Thank you, Kostas. And the next question is, how easy is it to deploy serverless apps like AWS Lambda? I think I'm amazing Codefresh.
This can probably be another webinar on its own. I think we already have a step that is that allows you to deploy serverless versions. But yeah, maybe we can do a webinar on this topic, like another webinar. So yes, it can be done. And we already have a custom pipeline step that you can deploy serverless apps.
Yeah, we did have a webinar on this, but it's been a little over a year now. So maybe we do need to do an update on this. But Amaya, if you'd like to look at codefresh.io/events, we have all of our previous webinars listed, and you can search there for I believe there is one on serverless, but that's a great tip. I'm going to jot that down and see if we can get another webinar on serverless going, because it has been a little while. Next question is how to, okay, this is another general question, how to create a CI/CD pipeline using Codefresh. We have webinars on this as well, but really the documentation might be the best place. What do you think, Kostas?
Maybe I can share my screen now. So if you go to Codefresh documentation, there is actually a topic, your first CI/CD pipeline, which is exactly this scenario. We assume that you know your way around, let's say, Git, Docker, and then that's it. And then we take the whole idea of how to get a Git commit, package it into a Docker image, build it, have some basic unit tests, store the Docker image, and push it. So just go to this page. I'm going to post it there, and this is exactly what you want to see. Okay, so I think this answers the question.
Okay, thank you, Kostas. And let's see our next question. Sorry, I lost my questions here. There they are. I'm liking Codefresh UI and its integrations. Is it enterprise ready?
Yes. So again, in the documentation, we actually have a specific section on enterprise features. So the things that you might expect, for example, single sign-on, which is a very, let's say, popular way of logging in. We support the major SSO providers. If you want access control, so instead of allowing everybody to click on every pipeline, you can say, you can define teams and specific users, and then define specific rules and say, I want this pipeline to be visible only to these people and to be editable by these people. Same thing for audit logs. So we have all the things that you could expect for an enterprise.
And relating to that question, we had a question in the chat about whether we had kind of on-prem offerings. So yes, we have a SaaS version available on-prem and also hybrid versions. If there's anything you want to add to that, Kostas.
Yeah, regarding the installation modes, there is actually, again, specific documentation on this. Yeah, the on-prem version is very popular because most people want to use the on-prem version, but we personally believe that the hybrid version is even better. So we split the things, so the web UI still runs in the cloud, and then every customer only gets a builder, which you install on your own Kubernetes cluster, and there your builds are running. So it's sort of hybrid because you get the best of most of both worlds. The only thing that you need to manage as a customer is the builder, and everything else is managed by us. And the important thing here is also that the communication is outgoing. So you don't need to open any ports to your firewall or stuff like this. So yes, we have an on-prem version, but I think you should also consider the hybrid version.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Those are all of our questions that we have for now. If you have any last questions, go ahead and enter them. We have just one more minute, and I please ask that you answer our poll. Let us know how we're doing, and also let us know if you're not using Codefresh already. If you'd like to try it, we can reach out and provide some more information. So again, thank you so much to Anna for the presentation. Thank you for Kostas for helping with questions, and we hope to see you all soon and on Codefresh Live. We actually have another webinar coming up this Thursday on Helm file. So if you want to check out codefresh.io/events, you can register for that webinar as well. I believe the official title is How to Simplify Your Code Using Helm file. So thank you for joining us today. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and we will see you again soon. I'll leave that poll open for just one more minute, and then we'll close out here. All right, thank you so much. Have a great day, everybody.